Welcome back. In this video, we are going to see how we can use the input that we get from the user, which is of type string, and convert it into a type of integer, which means into a number, so that we can later on compare the number that we get from the user with the number that we randomly generate. Because you cannot compare two things that are not of the same type. It's like comparing apples with pears. You wouldn't do that, or you can do that, but it doesn't give you any value. And that's the same thing with comparing strings to integers. And we're going to see how we can write our code so that we can convert a number that is saved in the form of a string into an actual integer number so that we can compare two integer numbers with each other. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with that. In order to now convert our user input text into an integer, we can use something called parsing. Okay, so what we can do first is, let's get the number that we get from the user input text and store it first. And we will store it in a string because it is of type string. So I'm going to use the name user input value, which is going to be the value that we get from the user input. Now we need, of course, a semicolon in order to finish the statement. And now we store the user input in a variable that we called user input value. It is of type string, and we're not adding any access modifiers because this variable now is inside of this onButtonClick method, which will only make it available for that particular method and not outside of it. We're going to look at scope a little later, which basically means where a variable is available and where it isn't. But for now, let's just use it as it is. So now let's actually make an integer out of this. In order to do that, we can use a new variable, which I'm going to call answer, and we're going to use int.parse. Inside of integers, there is this method called parse, and parsing allows us to convert from one type to another, which means from one data type to another. In this particular case, we want to convert from a string into an integer. So that's what this will do for us. So here, this parse method will just need to have the string, here it says string s, that we want to convert. And the string that we want to convert is our user input value. So here, user input value will do the trick for us. So now, basically answer will be the answer of our user input value as an integer, which means basically what the user has entered as an int, and we could now compare it with our random number. So for now, let's just do one thing. Let's take the answer, so whatever the user has entered, and multiply it with the old answer times 2. So what that will do is, it will basically take the answer that we have entered and multiply it with 2. So for now, let's also use the debug in order to display this answer saying twice what you entered is, and then the value that is our new answer. So please go ahead and add a new line here that will write that onto our console in Unity. Okay, so I hope you tried it. So basically we're going to use our log here saying twice what you entered is, and then the answer. Okay, let's for now test this, because what we're doing here is we're multiplying, and we can only multiply with whole numbers. So if we were to try to do the same thing with our user input value, for example, multiply with 2, let's try that. You can see this won't work. So even if we were to store that in another variable, that doesn't work because we are trying to multiply a string with an int. So operator multiplication cannot be applied to operands of type string and int. But here we're not getting this error, which means that this in fact now is an integer. Well, we saw it here, but now you can even double check it. So let's save this and let's actually run it in Unity. Okay, let's run the game, enter a value, let's say 5, and we can see twice what you entered is 10. And we can see here it says 5. So what we entered is 5, twice of what we entered is 10, and the random number is 10. Okay, so that's already good, but now what we want to do is we want to compare what we have entered with the random number. And that's what we're going to do in the video after the next one, because first we need to check out how if statements work. So how we can actually run conditional code. So see you in the next video.